Third day of passionate protests across the country. Right now, a new round of demonstrations at the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court. Justices on Friday overturning Roe v. Wade, saying there is no constitutional right to an abortion. Protesters not backing down after a night held for nearly 50 years, now taken away. And in New York, activists with Planned Parenthood leading today's Pride March. A sense of urgency there amid fears the ruling could roll back other civil rights decisions, including same-sex marriage. Some 26 states have either already banned or are making plans to ban or severely restrict abortion, while some others are vowing to protect the rights of women. CNN has reporters covering the developments from coast to coast. CNN's Sunlen Serfati is at the U.S. Supreme Court, where protesters are back for a third day. Sunlen, what are they saying?
Well, Fred, emotions here outside the Supreme Court are running very high. I want to let you know we just witnessed a very tense moment. We're on the outside of the main protest here, and as you can see, there is a small group of people protesting who are in support of the Supreme Court's decision. And what we're seeing is really conversations, passionate conversations taking place, both sides arguing. And in fact, there was a larger group out here getting in an argument a few minutes ago. At one point, someone swiped a megaphone from the other crowd, and they were given a verbal warning from the D.C. Metropolitan Police, who moved in some other police forces just to protect this area over here. But I want to give you a sense of the broader flavor, certainly as these sorts of conversations are playing out not only here, but deeper into this crowd. This is a crowd of a couple hundred strong, and we do see some counter-protesters, some protesters who are out here kneeling and praying over here, and certainly some other protesters talking to them. I think overall things have been very respectful here. I did speak to one man who traveled here from North Carolina with his wife. He is in support of the decision, and here's what he told me moments ago.
Personal opinion is I'm happy with it, but one of the reasons is it now gives each individual state the right to decide for itself what it wants its law to be regarding abortion, which is true about numerous other things, and no one complains about it. For example, speed limits. There's no one complaining about the speed limits being different in one state.
Now, that certainly was one opinion, but I should say the minority of people who we have talked to out here today, the majority of the people out here are protesting against the decision. They have been leading chants saying, "My body, my voice." Certainly, these people want to have their voices heard in opposition to that landmark ruling that came down on Friday. Fred?
All right, Sunlen. CNN's Camila Bernal is in Los Angeles, where more demonstrations are planned there. California is one of a handful of states vowing to protect a woman's right to choose. What's going on?
Hey, Fred, so the protest here is expected to start in about an hour, so this will be the third day of protests here in Los Angeles. And the message that I'm consistently hearing from these protesters is that they stand with the women in other states that will not have access to abortions. California, as you mentioned, is just one of a number of states where governors and legislators are saying we will fight back. And what they're doing is anything they can to expand access and even money for abortions, donations. And then they're even going a step further and saying they're going to do everything they can to protect women in other states that will likely come to, say, California, Washington State, Minnesota in search of an abortion. Governor Jay Inslee of Washington State saying that his state is a sanctuary state. He announced an executive order where he is directing state police not to comply with the extradition efforts from other states in these cases. He also called for legislation to codify the right to an abortion into state law in Washington State, and he promised $1 million down payment to start subsidizing reproductive health care networks. And then he said resources such as personnel, medical equipment will need to be amped up. There are similar efforts also happening in Minnesota, for example. Governor Tim Walz announcing these protections for women in other states, and especially all of this coming after the only abortion clinic in North Dakota announced they would move their services to Minnesota. Here's what the governor had to say.
We will use all legal authority of this office to decline to extradite people who are charged under other states' laws that criminalize providing, seeking, or obtaining reproductive health care services.
And of course, California also saying they will protect women from other states and saying they will try to stop civil action started in another state against a woman that comes to California seeking an abortion. So all of these states sort of coming together in the offensive, trying to do anything they can to sort of counter what's happening and what happened at the Supreme Court. Fred?
All right, Camila Bernal in Los Angeles, thanks so much. Polo Sandoval is at New York's Pride March. Polo, abortion rights getting a lot of attention there today, right?
Those spectators, the crowds, they are back again to celebrate New York City Pride. But as you point out, though, Fred, there is another element of protest that's mixed in this year's parade. And of course, we're talking about Planned Parenthood invited to basically lead the parade earlier this morning. It's largely symbolic, and everybody here obviously celebrating that move, feeling that it is basically echoing the frustrations and the anger that they have felt for 2 days now since that blockbuster Supreme Court ruling was handed down. I have to tell you, though, Fred, as we get ready for another wave of those participants to pass us here, what's heavy on the mind is that separate opinion from Justice Clarence Thomas expressing that it may be time to revisit previous rulings, not only including contraception, but also same-sex marriage. That is clearly on the minds of so many people here, as you're about to hear. As one young lady pointed out, that opinion, even though the conservative majority said that it will not be Friday's ruling will not affect those previous rulings, but she felt many people here calling that not just jarring, but terrifying.
I think he's really gunning for people who are different and things that he's afraid of and things that a lot of other people are afraid of. It gives us power, it gives us strength to fight back. And I mean, the fact that he, point out those names, I mean, we know what he's gunning for, so we're going to be fighting right back.
They promised under oath. No, they lied to you under oath. They lied to this community. They lied to my community as a woman. I know I'm safe in New York because it's in our state's constitution, but it's not just about us, it's about everyone in all 50 states.
And we need to be clear, remember, the conservative majority also weighed in on Justice Thomas's opinion, saying that that ruling on Friday, it is not supposed to have any effect on those previous rulings, but those words are doing very little to calm any concerns here on the streets of New York City, that they still feel that this will now hopefully lead to New York City officials further codifying those aspects of the law. And certainly, Fred, that side opinion from Justice Thomas, they would not be surprised if we are now on track for another politically charged conversation.
All right, Polo, Sunlen, Camila, thanks to all of you. Appreciate it. So for many Americans, there has been an outpouring of anger and disbelief as more than 24 states have indicated they could ban or restrict abortion. CNN's Nadia Romero has more.
Abortion bans are illegitimate. Forced motherhood is illegitimate.
From Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles and in between, abortion rights protesters continue to voice their anguish following the ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court to eliminate the federal constitutional right to an abortion.
I'm angry. I'm fired up. The fight is not over. People did this fight 50 years ago. I guess it's our turn to take the fight up again. It may take us 50 years, but we'll get back.
Smaller gatherings of people celebrating the ruling are also taking place.
Millions of lives will be saved by this decision.
In Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a pedestrian was injured by a truck while trying to legally cross the street in front of the federal courthouse during Friday evening's protests in the city, according to Cedar Rapids police.
I look over, I see people trying to push the truck back, and I just instantly got mad and ran over, tried to stop the truck.
Video of the incident shows a truck appearing to push through a group of protesters, with one person falling to the ground after making contact with the vehicle. In Providence, Rhode Island, state Democratic Senate candidate Jennifer Rourke was punched in the face by an off-duty police officer and GOP opponent at an abortion rights rally at the State House on Friday night. Rourke told CNN in a statement. The incident, which was caught on video, shows what appears to be Rourke stepping into an altercation at the protest and almost immediately afterwards getting punched in the face by Jean Lugo. Lugo turned himself in to the Rhode Island State Police on Saturday. Eric Yanyar, lieutenant for the Rhode Island State Police, told CNN. CNN reached out to the Providence Fraternal Order of Police to inquire about the possible legal representation for Lugo, but did not hear back Saturday night. In Phoenix, law enforcement used tear gas late Friday to disperse a crowd of abortion rights supporters after they repeatedly pounded on the glass doors of the state Senate building. Arizona Department of Public Safety spokesperson Bart Graves told CNN. In Eugene, Oregon, 10 people were arrested on Friday night during a demonstration dubbed a Night of Rage in response to the ruling, according to a release from Eugene police. Greenville, South Carolina. At least 6 people were arrested Saturday at a protest that was attended by hundreds of people in downtown, according to a news release by the Greenville Police Department. Video taken by Emily Porter shows the moment police detained several demonstrators in downtown Greenville at the rally. A video shared with CNN shows police detaining several people and forcing a man to the ground. An officer is also seen yelling at protesters to get back, although another officer tells protesters who are jeering the police, "We are not on either side." In Washington, D.C., U.S. Capitol Police arrested 2 people on Saturday afternoon for the destruction of property after they were accused of, quote, throwing paint over the fence by the U.S. Supreme Court, USCP tweeted. Large protests have also been held in Philadelphia and Los Angeles. And in New York City, many demonstrators gathered in Washington Square Park to protest the ruling, even though New York state law will remain in place to protect abortion rights.
All right, Nadia Romero, thanks for that report. So for more now on all that's happening, I want to bring in Gloria Brown Marshall. She's a constitutional law professor at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice and author of the book, The Voting Rights War. Professor, welcome. Good to see you again.
Hello.
So the consequences of this U.S. Supreme Court ruling, has been swift. I mean, 2 days after the overturning of a nearly 50-year-old right. Are you processing this any differently?
I probably am. And one of the things that I'm looking at is the fact that this was a generationally long strategy that started the day after Roe and has continued up to this point. And it's used violence as well as biased laws in order to get what they wanted, starting with the state gubernatorial races up to the Senate. This has been a long road for them. And I have to add this as well. They use these strategies in civil rights as a structure for their strategy to undermine Roe versus Wade. So my concern is that we have a rogue court, and Chief Justice Roberts has a rogue court on his hands, and they're not going to stop with abortion rights. They're going to plow into affirmative action, same-sex marriage, and create a United States based on the 1940s, because this is a nationalist agenda that Donald Trump was I guess he's most visible leader of, but that mindset of nationalism is percolating right below the surface in this country.
Well, then that brings me to this, because you and I spoke Friday, and you said this movement to overturn Roe v. Wade is fueled by a number of things, like you just spelled out, including a fear of the black and browning of America. And then listen to what an Illinois representative said just last night at a Trump rally, spelling out why she believes overturning Roe v. Wade is a victory. Listen.
President Trump, on behalf of all the MAGA patriots in America, I want to thank you for the historic victory for life in the Supreme Court yesterday.
So that comment has gotten a lot of traction and criticism on social media. Her spokesperson told various news outlets that Miller meant to say right to life, not white life. I mean, slip of the tongue or not, explain why you say this is a real catalyst against abortion rights.
I mean, this is something I've been saying for many years. The nationalist movement is a movement that comes and goes in this country. And we have statutes from the 1800s, the early 1900s, again and again. When the white population begins to dip, the fear is they will not be in majority and therefore not be in power. By the year 2045, the U.S. Census has said that this country is going to be majority people of color. That is something that has fueled a lot of what drove white voters to the polls. They might not say it outright, and she was clear in what she was saying. When you saw these white domestic terrorists marching through the campus and in Charlottesville and other places. This replacement theory that they have, what are you talking about? Replacing white people, especially white men, with people of color or Jews. This is what this is about at its core. The idea that the white population is dipping, they're not having as many babies. And I'm going to say something else, Frederica, and as I said before, was what I said before. They don't care about the fact that this would mean brown and black babies will be born, because we have undereducation of brown and black children. We have underemployment of brown and black adults. We have the prison system, and we have the lack of health care. All of those things then continue to undermine the population growth of those brown and black babies into adulthood, and therefore giving rise to more of these white adults who will stay in power, even if it's an apartheid system in which they're the minority, but then have the power of the majority.
Let's talk about another concern that has been elevated as a result of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We've seen, several progressive members of Congress, including Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, flatly say out, that the Supreme Court justices who said during their confirmation hearings that Roe was settled law, that there was precedent, only to turn around and overturn that ruling. It's her view, and that of so many others who have spoken out, who say that those justices should face impeachment. Can justices be impeached for the contradiction of what they said and how they ruled?
Well, it could be pointed out, they had a change of heart. We've had justices, one member just of the U.S. Supreme Court began as a member of the Ku Klux Klan and then became a liberal justice. So you have justices who do have a change in their legal mindset and their sense of what law should be, where the country should go, and their interpretation of it. Unfortunately, from Justice Alito through Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett, who actually said very little during her confirmation hearing, they lied. And they knew that they were part of this conspiracy to undercut Roe and same-sex marriage and so many other rights that we consider fundamental, because they would not have been chosen in the first place. Part of the listing, that vetting from the Federalist Society we all complained about in the legal world, was the fact that Donald Trump asked for those people who would undermine Roe versus Wade. And those are the people who were on the list, and those were the names put forward in the first place.
Right. It's been widely reported that on that Federalist Society list, that was the criteria, and those names came from that. Professor Gloria Browne-Marshall, good to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead, a series of Russian missiles strike the capital of Ukraine today, just as world leaders are meeting in Europe for a set of critical meetings with Russia's war front and center.
When you dream more, you need to move more. With over 45% of sub-Saharan Africa using mobile money, innovative digital payment solutions are giving people financial freedom. Access FacePay uses AI to make transactions more secure and accessible for over 31 million customers. Access. More than banking.
Heard it all before? But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can we do that explores a fresh angle? So let's untangle the players and political forces. The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Weeknights on CNN.
Forced labor looks different in different countries and different sectors. My name is Jonas Astrup. I'm the Chief Technical Advisor for the ILO Third-Party Monitoring Project in Uzbekistan. And I've been based in Tashkent for the last 4 years. Uzbekistan is the 6th largest producer of cotton in the world, but the cotton harvest in Uzbekistan is the world's largest recruitment effort, with approximately 2 million people picking cotton every year from September to November. And ILO has been monitoring the cotton harvest in Uzbekistan for child labor since 2013 and for child labor and forced labor since 2015 under an agreement with the World Bank. We have witnessed incredible changes during that time. 2 million children out of child labor and 500,000 adults out of forced labor. We have seen wages increased by over 600%. We have seen the number of labor inspectors doubled and perpetrators punished. Forced labor and child labor is now a criminal offense in Uzbekistan. We've seen awareness raising campaigns to make sure that people are aware of their rights, and we have seen a liberalization and a privatization of the agricultural system. There's still work to do in Uzbekistan, but I think it's fair to say that Uzbekistan is a success story in the world of work.
I'm Barry Hurst, Energy and Sustainability Director at Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric was ranked the world's most sustainable company in 2021 by Corporate Knights, and it drew a lot of attention to what we've been working on now for over 10 years. So I think the important thing to emphasise is that it's a long-term commitment and that it takes a lot of organisation to really make big strides. So the advice I would give is do strategy and action in parallel. We see a lot of companies who have a strategy but are unsure on how to implement it, and we see companies that want to get action but don't have a clear strategy. So I would say always do the two in parallel if you want to get maximum impact and really accelerate your journey.
From the tiniest warbler to the mightiest whale shark, nature is on the move, but natural paths are under threat. Now meet incredible conservationists, helping species cross highways, span flyways, and get from A to B.
This is nature's highway, and we must protect it.
Call to Earth, protecting nature's highways.
Saturday on CNN.
All right, welcome back. Explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv earlier today. Ukrainian officials say at least one person was killed and 5 were wounded when missiles hit a residential apartment block. A 7-year-old girl and her mother were among the injured. The attack happened just as the G7 summit got underway in the German Alps. And just moments ago, world leaders gathered for another group photo following their dinner. President Biden is joining world leaders as they grapple with the crisis in Ukraine and a turbulent global economy. The president spoke earlier and had a clear message for his G7 counterparts. They must show unity against Russia and President Vladimir Putin.
We have to stay together, because Putin has been counting on from the beginning. And somehow NATO would, and the G7 would splinter, but we haven't, and we're not going to. So can't let this aggression take the form it has and get away with it.
White House correspondent MJ Lee is covering the G7 for us. So are we seeing real unity among the G7 leaders?
Yeah, so far, yes, Fred, and that, of course, is a major goal of this G7 summit, is for the U.S. and its G7 allies to show this united front against the Russia aggression that we continue to see in Ukraine. And the focus today that we saw on the first day of this summit was these leaders rolling out this major global initiatives related to infrastructure, which the U.S. has pledged that it would spend some $200 billion over the course of 5 years on everything from developing vaccines to fighting climate change to clean energy initiatives. And that last point is so critical, particularly if you think about the fact that the war in Ukraine has had the effect of driving up energy prices. That for consumers has meant higher gas prices. And that, of course, is a big problem for President Biden back at home. We heard him talking about this issue and the effect that the war has had on energy prices all across the country earlier today. Take a listen.
The entire world is feeling the impact of Russia's brutal war in Ukraine and on our energy markets. We need worldwide effort to invest in transformative clean energy projects to ensure that critical infrastructure is resilient to changing climate. We want democracies demonstrate what we can do, all that we have to offer, I have no doubt that we'll win the competition every time.
And Fred, of course, domestic issues always follow a president around, even when he is traveling abroad. Just a few minutes ago, reporters with the president asked him whether the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, whether that had come up at all during today's summit. And he said, no, that is not a topic that came up in any shape or form. Just another reminder that Ukraine, of course, is the major and looming topic over this summit. Fred.
All right, MJ Lee, thank you so much. And now to Kyiv, Ukraine, where CNN's Salma Abdelaziz has more on the missile strike that hit an apartment block today.
An attack that rattled Ukraine's capital. In the early hours of Sunday morning, multiple Russian missiles hit a residential area. A 9-story apartment block was struck, leaving families trapped under the rubble. Dozens of rescue workers scrambled to pull survivors out of the ruins, using cranes to reach the still smoldering top floor. Natalia Nikitina watched in horror as first responders tried to rescue her daughter-in-law. Losing loved ones is the worst fate, she said. We do not deserve this. This video from emergency services shows the harrowing rescue. After a nearly 5-hour ordeal, Katerina was pulled out injured, but alive.
This horrific attack is going to shake up Kyiv. For weeks now, the capital has been relatively secure, relatively quiet. This is absolutely going to shatter that semblance of safety.
Several other residents were wounded, including Katerina's 7-year-old daughter, who was cut by fragments as she slept. At least one person was killed, police said. The backyard of a nearby kindergarten was also struck, leaving shrapnel where children play. On the scene, the mayor of Kyiv expressed outrage.
This senseless war, and we have to do everything to stop this war because thousands and thousands unguilty people, civilians, died.
There are a number of military facilities in the area, officials say, but the victims here clearly innocent. The airstrikes happening as G7 leaders gathered for a major summit in Germany, a possible message from President Putin.
Now, Frederica, all across the country, Russia is stepping up its attacks. Kharkiv, the second largest city, has been shelled recently quite heavily. All along those front lines in the east, Ukrainian forces are on the back foot as Russia increases its aggression, trying to take more and more territory. Meanwhile, Ukrainian troops say they're outmanned and outgunned. President Zelensky is set to address the G7, and you can be sure he's going to bring up the civilian losses, and you can be sure he's going to plead for more help.
All right, Salma Abdelaziz, thank you so much in Kyiv. All right, still ahead, the U.S. Supreme Court's split decision to overturn Roe v. Wade shows just how divided the court is. What does that division mean for the high court going forward? We'll discuss after this.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
This is a really important story.
My name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN.
Assalamu alaikum. Day in, day out, you see the reality of people living through this.
Ничего страшного.
Okay.
This is the front line.
On a human level, you find courage, sacrifice. This is what life is about.
A lot of people are wondering why.
You see the worst of humanity.
Putin might use a nuclear weapon. Absolutely terrifying.
But you also see the best of humanity. My job is to be present.
The human cost is right here.
And to tell these stories.
We're talking about families.
That is the most important thing. I'm Clarissa Ward in Ukraine.
This
is
CNN.
I'm Richard Crest in New York, and this is CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Delia Gallagher in Rome, and this is CNN.
All right, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade and nearly 50 years of precedent not only stunned the nation, but once again showed just how divided the court and the nation are. CNN Supreme Court reporter Ariane DeVogue joining us right now. So, Ariane, I mean, the court has on occasion overturned long-standing precedent before, but rarely in such a seminal case like this. What does this mean for the court moving forward?
Well, Fred, it means that the court really reflects the fact that they're two different Americas. Look at abortion, for example. The liberals on the court, they see that as a fundamental right. They see that women need that protection in those red states that are never going to allow abortion, and they say that it unfairly impacts poor women. The conservatives on the other side, they say that there's nothing in the Constitution about abortion. They say that this issue belongs to the states, to the political branches, and that if people are unhappy with it, they have to go to the ballot box. But they really look at this as separation of powers, and they say you can't read this into the Constitution when it's not there. And as far as going forward, it means right now that nearly half the states will soon bar abortion. It won't be legal in nearly half the states, Fred.
So this will ultimately be a defining ruling for the Chief Justice John Roberts and his court. The Chief Justice wanted the justices to uphold the Mississippi abortion law but not overturn Roe. So is this a sign that he has lost the grip on the court?
Sure is. The Chief Justice here, he did not want to go as fast and as far as the conservatives on this issue. Other areas he is still with them, but here he didn't want to do that. He said, look, All we have to do here is allow this Mississippi law, and we don't have to get to the federal right of abortion. We don't have to get to Roe v. Wade. And we saw it at oral arguments. If you're looking at, here he was trying to control the court, and he planted this middle ground position, and he was looking for somebody, anybody, to join with him, to say something that would show that they agreed with him and that he could have the lead here. Instead, the conservatives left him behind. They don't care about his incremental approach here. They wanted to go ahead and go all the way here, and the Chief Justice found himself alone.
All right, now let's talk about fairly new Justice Kavanaugh. He's come under criticism for this ruling after some senators say they were misled by his testimony during the confirmation. How might this ruling impact future confirmation hearings?
Fred, I have covered so many confirmation hearings, and abortion always comes up, and the nominee always says, well, I can't talk about that. And then they're asked about that doctrine called stare decisis. That's legalese for judges leaving precedent alone in order to build stability in the court. And they always say during these arguments that, yes, they believe in stare decisis, but it's really a ridiculous routine, because any nominee, particularly if they're a lower court judge, of course they're bound by Supreme Court precedent. Of course they're going to say, yes, I believe in stare decisis. But once they're a Supreme Court justice, they don't have to follow that anymore. And that's what we're seeing here. And it was interesting to see, because remember how controversial Brett Kavanaugh's hearings were, and he really needed the vote of Susan Collins, that Republican. And she said one of the reasons that she voted for him is that she felt like he had convinced her that he wasn't going to overturn precedent. Well, then he did, and you saw her anger in the last couple of days. And other people, they feel like they were misled by Kavanaugh, but in fact it's sort of a ridiculous way to look at these hearings, and I'll tell you, it's going to change confirmation hearings forever.
All right, Senator Collins has said that she felt her trust has been abused. She spoke out twice about this since the ruling on Friday. All right, thank you so much, Ariane DeVoe.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee is scheduled to vote on an Omicron component for COVID-19 booster vaccines, while doctors are sounding the alarm about what's being called COVID rebound. We'll have the latest on the pandemic next.
The problem with plastic is that it's indestructible. Not-plat packaging can break down in a home compost extremely fast, just like an apple or just like an orange. A lot of people were surprised that seaweed could be turned into a packaging material. We chose seaweed because it has a lot of sustainable credentials. It doesn't use fresh water or fertilizer to grow. It just grows on its own in the sea without human intervention. And on top of that, when it grows, it sequesters carbon. We partnered for the London Marathon with Lucozade. They were using plastic bottles and cups, and they were really keen to reduce the amount of waste that is created at these events. At the end of the event, it was brilliant that the trucks that clean the streets and usually have to stop at each station to pick up all of that plastic, they just drove by our station. There was nothing to pick up, so it was really incredible, the feeling that we had delivered hydration without the plastic. Nature has all of the solutions. We just have to continue getting our inspiration from it. Different plants, different trees, different vegetables. This is what the future looks like. We need to use more of other natural materials, and I think through this diversity, we can really solve this problem. And I'm really hopeful that we will.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces.
I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on.
No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered.
There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
All right, Pfizer says tweaked COVID-19 vaccines boost protection against Omicron, while current COVID vaccines continue to provide protection against severe disease and death. Their effectiveness dropped when the Omicron variant emerged. Pfizer's announcement comes days before FDA vaccine advisors are scheduled to vote on updated COVID boosters for the fall. I want to bring in now Dr. Anand Swaminathan for more discussion on this. He's an emergency medicine physician joining me now. Good to see you, doctor. So what considerations will the panel be making?
I think there's going to be considerations about the basic safety, which we kind of know already based on what we've seen over the last couple of years with these vaccines. And then it's really going to be a matter of efficacy. And that's what we really need to know about is how effective are these, not against the original Omicron that we saw in December and January, but on the newer subvariants that are really emerging. So BA4, BA5, and how effective this is going to be against that. I think this is good news that we're seeing a more specific booster, but I'm not sure how effective it's going to be against those other subvariants. And that's the data that we really need to know before we start pushing people in that direction.
Interesting. Okay, and then there's this new phrase that we're hearing, COVID rebound. What is that?
Well, I think what we're seeing is people who take Paxlovid and they get better, but then when they stop that Paxlovid, when the prescription finishes, they're actually having a return of symptoms. It's actually causing a longer course. It's pretty uncommon. We're talking about 1% to 2% of people that are seeing that. And we haven't seen any cases of anyone who takes Paxlovid, gets better, then gets sick again, and gets sick and gets severe sickness or gets hospitalized. So I don't think it's a huge thing for us to overreact about at this point, but I do think we have to understand how we should be getting people out of isolation once they test positive, whether they take Paxlovid or not, because of this issue of the Paxlovid suppresses the virus, but you may still have it. So you may be asymptomatic, but still spreading after the 5 days of that medication, or even after 5 days of having COVID. So we have to be really on top of that, and we should have been embracing for a long time a test to return. Once you're asymptomatic, you take a rapid test negative, you're able to return. If that rapid test is positive, you stay in isolation. And if you're working with people or you're in contact with people who are immunosuppressed, maybe 2 rapid tests back to back to really know that you are safe to return. That's really what we should be embracing to break that isolation once you have a case of COVID.
Wow, that's incredible. All right, and then the CDC says that 1 in 5 people in the U.S. live in a county with high community level spread and recommend indoor masking as we look ahead to the fall. Should residents prepare for return to stricter mask guidance?
I think so. The problem is whether people are really going to embrace it or not. I'll tell you, Fred, I haven't gone away from indoor masking in public spaces because not just my fear of getting it from someone else, but it's also I don't want to give it to somebody. Maybe I'm asymptomatic and I'm spreading and I don't want to give it to someone. I want people to feel secure in those public spaces. And I think the way to do it is by continuing to mask indoors. I went to a concert last night with my son and some friends. We all wore masks the entire time. And I feel that that gives that extra level of safety while cases are surging.
Yeah, I still do the same. I every now and then get the stink eye for it, but that's okay. I got a hard shell.
It's
I can
okay.
handle
You're
it.
protecting
it's all for
everyone
safety.
around you.
Everybody, and me too. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Anand Swaminathan. Good to see you. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Wherever you go in the world, one airline goes further to make it feel exceptional. Qatar Airways, going places together.
From the tiniest warbler to the mightiest whale shark, nature is on the move, but natural paths are under threat. Now meet incredible conservationists, helping species cross highways, span flyways, and get from A to B.
This is nature's highway, and we must protect it.
Call to Earth, protecting nature's highways.
Saturday on CNN.
We think of the metaverse as the next iteration of social media. And although there's only a few 100,000 people using it today, we anticipate that over the next few years, there's going to be millions of people joining these platforms and eventually billions of people using these platforms. This is not a fad. I mean, we can look at companies like Facebook doing the largest rebrand in history to Meta. We can look at companies like Samsung. Even the fashion brands like Gucci, Balenciaga, Adidas, and Nike are all establishing a presence there. And so what I would say to people that are still skeptical, say this is, maybe are the same type of people that were skeptical about social media and its impact on advertising, and maybe even people who are skeptical about the internet. My prediction is that within 24 months, every single large corporation is going to have to need a presence in the metaverse in the same way that they need a website.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for a market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here.
Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weekdays on CNN.
I'm Will Ripley in Taipei, Taiwan, and this is CNN.
He's interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
The House on Friday passed a bipartisan resolution calling on Russia to immediately release WNBA star Brittany Griner. She has been held in Russia since February on drug smuggling accusations and is officially classified by the U.S. State Department as wrongfully detained. CNN sports analyst Christine Brennan joining me right now. Christine, a Russian court extended her detention through at least July 2nd. They keep doing this. So this House resolution, might it make any kind of difference?
Probably not, Frederica. I know you and I and many, many others hope it would. I hope to be wrong on that, but no, so far nothing really has made much of a difference, and that is clearly a problem. I mean, it's 4 months now, 4 months that she has been detained. Right, and it was, it was February. The Olympics were ending. Look at how far every day and every week that goes by. It is infuriating. It's terrible. I'm glad we're talking about it to keep it in the news. I'm on top of it. I know you are, and let's hope that the continued coverage journalistically and whatever political pressure that could be there, let's hope that can make a difference.
Yeah, I really worry about her, just like everybody does. I cannot imagine what her state of mind is right now, physically, what kind of condition she might be in as an elite athlete, and just stopping her world and her family too. It's heartbreaking. So Christine, let me now. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say her wife even talked about having, the simple act of placing a phone call.
Yeah.
And it was a missed signals, a few days ago. And that the embassy and others have said they were going to rectify that and clear that up. But think about that. Just that opportunity to talk on the phone, and that has been so difficult.
Yeah, that was horrible. Okay, let me too talk to you about this new film on legendary tennis player Arthur Ashe, who not only excelled as an athlete who was a black man in a predominantly white sport, he changed the way the world viewed social issues, and now the new CNN film Citizen Ashe looks at the impact that he had both on and off the court. Take a look.
He had evolved from someone who was analytical to someone who became more and more about direct action.
Did you get in South Africa a feeling that you could change things just by playing tennis?
No, I am not presumptuous enough to think I can change anything, per se.
He wanted black South Africans to see a free black man and the possibilities that a free black man could live.
So Christine, help put Ashe's success into context for us, and how his prowess as an athlete also allowed him to realize the power he had as an athlete on the global stage of a social consciousness.
Absolutely, Fred. He was a superstar and a black man in a lily white country club sport. And he knew that. So he had to be careful. And the documentary speaks about this. He found his voice, and he became much more of an advocate in the late 60s as the nation was exploding and the civil rights movement, of course, the murder of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. That's when he started to find his voice. He had to be careful before that, to tread softly and just let that racket do the talking. And it sure did. He won 3 of the 4 Grand Slam titles. I remember his 1975 Wimbledon victory. Extraordinary to see a black man on center court winning. Grace, class, dignity. He didn't even make it unfortunately, to 50 years old. He died at 49. And of course, with due to AIDS because of a blood transfusion.
Blood transfusion.
And right, he had a bad heart, and so because of a blood transfusion, he caught HIV and then died of AIDS in 1993. As I said, just still 49 years old. What could have been? He would be turning 79 in a couple weeks. And to think, Fred, of the way he would have mentored Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, so many others, Tiger Woods, the force he could have continued to be, and the sounding board for athletes, black and white, men and women. It would have been extraordinary what the world missed, not just sports, but the world missed by not having Arthur Ashe for all these years.
So true. And of course, we're all looking forward to this documentary because, you know, as much as we know about Arthur Ashe, there are so many other layers about him that will be brought to our attention this evening in a really